My name is Kuzmicki. I'm the Executive Director of the Program in Real Estate and Infrastructure at the Schulich School of Business, York University. My job in real estate wasn't really real estate, but it's what introduced me to real estate. Coming out of university with a Bachelor of Arts, I got a job with a company called Mortgage Insurance Company of Canada, and I was a mortgage insurance underwriter. I was underwriting mortgages against default. And when I started the first day, I went to the reception. I was in an office at a desk in the reception area, since there was no room for me. And I shared that desk with another guy. That's how crowded we were. And I did not know what a mortgage was, and that was my introduction to real estate. But what I discovered in the year and a half that I was there there was this thing called development, and people built buildings, and something about that process and the idea of creating value somehow appealed to me. And the other thing I discovered was valuation, and the whole idea of a cap rate, which sort of sounds silly, and I think it is, but it was interesting to me because I liked the numbers, I liked the process, but I didn't really understand it. And what I discovered that nobody else really understood it either. So it made me curious about really what value was and where it came from and how you approach that whole process. And so after I took my MBA degree, I thought real estate and particularly development was something I was interested in and I wanted to pursue. Well, you know what? I want to talk about a mentor later in my career because that's maybe a bigger influence in my life. But I did have a great boss. The guy who hired me, my first job out of business school was with Prudential of America. And my boss there was a guy named Alan Wallace. And he was an interesting guy. Did not really fit the mold exactly of an institutional real estate person. And from him I got a lot of really a lot of history of real estate, particularly in Montreal, and that made it a lot more interesting, I guess, just knowing the personalities and how how things were done. Pardon me. You know, historically, the history of Place Ville Marie was something I got from Al. And the other thing that he did for me was he kind of guided me along and moved me along and made sure I learned different things and was exposed to different things. And ultimately, the last thing he did for me before he retired was he convinced me to come to Toronto to head up a development project that we had going here. And I'm glad I listened to him. So he was very important to me that way. And then the other guy is a guy named Ron Barbaro, and Ron was the president of Prudential of America sometime after I arrived here. He became the president, and he's a very creative, different kind of institutional guy. Basically, he was a life insurance salesman you know, he had sort of high-profile, high-net-worth clients and a lot of real estate clients. So he liked real estate, and probably the thing I got from him that was really the most important is that this is a guy who totally did not fit the mold, and he didn't care. He just did things the way he did things, and I learned a lot about you know, finding your own way, your own style to operate with, and not just trying to conform and be like, you know, do it the way everybody else does. And again, he was a great guy who gave me a lot of support and moved me along in my career. And I would say probably the most memorable person of anybody I've met in my business life. Midlife crisis, and I guess in retrospect, and similar, when was that? Probably, I was 44 years old actually. And I realized at a certain point a couple of things happened. I just realized that I was not really doing what I enjoyed doing. I mean, I enjoyed doing what I was doing, but there were things that I did not enjoy that were not really me, and I didn't want to do them for the rest of my life. So at that point, to make the long story short, I left my job and I took a little bit of time off and I thought about things and came back into the industry a few months later as a consultant basically with a couple of different companies. And along the way, I was asked if I would come to Schulich and teach a course, just opportunistically. And I thought that would be kind of neat and cool and so on. So I came and I did that, and I realized that we had a program here that was a great, had a lot of potential, but it needed a little bit of nurturing. And so I approached the school and Jim McKellar and said, why don't you bring me in to do that? And that's how I got here. The things that I think about real estate are. There's probably three things in particular. They all begin with the letter C. One is that it is very creative. And real estate really is about, whether it's projects or deals, it's really about ideas and making those ideas come to fruition. So that just appeals to me. That's just in my nature, I guess, a little bit. And I think in the nature of actually most people. The second C is competitive. It's a very competitive business, and if you are a competitive person, it's a great venue in which to exercise those characteristics and have some fun doing that. And the third aspect, I think, again with the C, is it's very collaborative. You're always working in different teams on different projects. And one day you're across the table with somebody, fighting over something, and the next day you're on the same team trying to make something happen. So those three elements, I think, are more than anything else what has appealed to me in real estate. I think in retrospect, anything I think about, I come up with, it was pretty easy after all. At the time, you can get stressed and wonder how you're going to work something out, or why you got stuck in the situation with these people at this time and so on. And it sounds like a challenge, but I think everything kind of works out. The thing that I think was actually personally difficult for me was and again, when I look back, probably not that difficult, but it was that decision that I wanted to change what I was doing, and making the decision actually to let go of something that really defined me and was a source of a lot of stability in my life and so on, and decide to actually kind of jump off the edge of the cliff and find out what was at the bottom. So yeah, I stressed over that a little bit, and I spent quite a bit of time working through that before I made the decision. But once I did, I was pretty happy about it. Well, that's a good one, because I am I'm like a failed Catholic. I'm a failed ULI member. I probably haven't been as involved as I might have been. Of course, ULI was not active in Toronto until a few years ago. But I do recall that from the earliest times, once I got involved with real estate in a real way and was involved in development and doing projects and working with an American company, ULI was a big deal. It was a brand name that you kind of aspired to somehow being a part of. And that opportunity, came up several years ago in Toronto for me to there was a chapter formed. So I did join at that time. It's good networking, lots of educational opportunities. But I think it helps to define real estate, at least in North America. Helps to define real estate as a profession in a way that real estate needs to be defined, and I think it does represent kind of a standard, I guess, for lack of another word, that we can all sort of reach for. And I come from the industry. I have a lot of friends in the industry, a lot of relationships and connections. And I do find the industry there's something about this industry actually that's pretty special, pretty unique, I think. and that is, going back to that collaborative part, people, it's a very social industry, and we all rely on each other. And you know, if you've been in it any length of time, you realize that anything you've accomplished has been somebody else that's been involved that's actually helped you. So when you ask people for help in the other direction, most people are actually very willing to help out because it's just the way we do things. So we've been able to you know, draw a lot of people into the school, whether as guest speakers, as part of our advisory council. We have a very active student club here, a great president this year, but also in years past. That really, you know, we rely on the student club a great deal to provide opportunities for the students to meet people in the industry and to learn more about the industry. That was basically our perspectives lecture, except we didn't call it that because the format was a little bit different. And but that's a book that was published by RealPAC, and they approached us and said, "Would you do something with the students to present this book to the students?" And we said sure, and we turned it into a pretty large event with, I guess, you know, 250 people or so coming in. Again, a lot of our alumni. Our alumni are really a good group of people that stay connected to the school. Players that are profiled in that book, Michael Cooper and David Podmore and Dory Siegel were here, as well as the author. So again, just a good opportunity for students to meet a lot of people just in the audience and so on with the networking, but also to hear from three people that are you know, very smart and I think inspirational when they talk about some of the things they've done and why they did them and how they did them. You know, from past real estate cycles. I will say, I mean, I think stupidity is not something to be sought after. I think that, you know, there is risk in everything. And I think uniformly, the people who survive cycles, who are in it for the long run, and who are very successful over the long run, are people who have a real sensitivity to risk, understand that it's there, and spend a lot of their time deciding whether they're being, you know, whether the risk is worth taking, and how to manage that risk. And you know, another lesson I'd say, you don't bet the farm. You know, it's okay when you're starting out in business to take a big risk because you haven't got much to lose. You take that big risk, and sometimes that's what you have to do to get a start. But once you have something to lose, don't bet the farm. I think that's another thing that you learn. Leverage is a very dangerous thing, and it's a very intoxicating thing. And you've got to be careful with succumbing to its allure. And the last thing I would say is, and it's probably the topic that's most in my mind these days, is conflict of interest, or alignments of interest, and you know, really being careful in understanding what is motivating people. You have to understand how people are truly motivated in any particular situation in order to be able to determine whether you can actually rely on them, whether it's what they tell you or what they're going to do for you. And maybe a corollary to all of that, maybe the most important single thing is you got to think for yourself. And I think very often what you see in cycles is something is going really well, and a lot of people think, boy, this is great, I'm going to get involved with this and do something. But they're not really thinking for themselves. They're just actually following what they see everybody, you know, what they think everybody else is doing. So you've got to think for yourself, and usually the best decisions you make are the ones that are on the road that's least traveled. It's what other people aren't doing. It's what you ought to be doing. You know, my favorite building, I guess, or group of buildings in Toronto, probably is the TD Centre. You know, first of all, it's classic modernist design. I think I don't know, there's something about it that I really like the TV Center. It just seems to me like it's a proper buildings in the proper place. Yeah, I would say that, probably that. And I'm a big fan of again, but that's probably more for sentimental reasons, Place Ville Marie in Montreal. Again, to me, it's very defining of the city of Montreal. You know, just as maybe an outlier throughout the Taj Mahal, probably the building that probably, you know, just seeing it for the first time had a really significant impact. Like I just felt it. I don't know why. Maybe just because it's so iconic, but it had a definite impression on me. As many people know, I like walking my dog, particularly in the mornings, with my wife. We like to take the dog, particularly, well, on weekends we're able to take him up to the park and let him run around. Love that. You know, and you know, just hanging out, being with people. Really nothing really special. Just I would say my favorite thing of all would be to wake up on a weekend and actually have nothing to do. That is something I aspire. It does happen, and I recall being that way at an earlier stage of my life, and I aspire to being that way again. I think the opportunity to actually, like, you know, come up with something with no agenda, that's the greatest thing in the world.